To say that Masters of the Universe has a very colorful and diverse cast of characters, well, that's an understatement. Perhaps there is no better example of such a character than Man-E-Faces. And today, that's exactly what we're going to be having a look at. The latest in a long line of modern Man-E-Faces figures, as we look at the brand new mini-comic repaint of the Origins Man-E-Faces figure. But as I always say, greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. And today we'll be having a look at the Man-E-Faces of Man-E-Faces. Don't forget, if you haven't yet, to be sure to like the video because that really does make us happy here at Fanboys Forever. And of course, we would love for you to be able to subscribe. So if you've not done that yet, it's really simple. It only takes a minute and we'd really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's begin the review. So looking at our figure here, we'll get our other Man-E-Faces out of the way until it's time for our comparisons later. And you can see that we're looking at the basic Masters of the Universe Origins packaging. You can see that at the top it says that it's new 423. This is an unpunched card, but I could care less because I'm an opener. So he is a heroic human, robot, monster, we're not even sure. And you can see the cool artwork right there. And here is the figure itself. Turn the head for 3 different faces. On the back, we can see that we have this really nice picture. I really love this with Man-E-Faces and all of his different forms. This is some of my favorite artwork I've seen on an Origins card. And I really like this kind of revisionist Castle Grayskull take back here, and it even has a Point Dread and the Talon Fighter on it. Here's the barcode, but I don't know if it'll help much because this was really like a Amazon exclusive, I believe. So, you know, this ended up being kind of hard to get a hold of, but I'd had my pre-order in for a while, and they shipped them out to me several months ago. But with everything going on with my family, I really wasn't in a headspace to do the review, so I thought now would be a good time. All right, let's go ahead and get this guy open. Aside from the figure and accessories, we do get this handy dandy guide about what can actually be removed from the figure and switched around. Notice that with Man-E-Faces, the head is not really meant to be taken off the figure because it's part of the action feature. And the figure also comes with a mini comic that is exclusive just for this particular release called The Faces Within. Pretty interesting comic, not bad at all really. And here we have our brand new Man-E-Faces figure. So I was really surprised by this release when they first announced it and shown it off, because I guess I just really hadn't considered necessarily the need for such a figure to come out. I know that the big thing when it comes to Man-E-Faces is there's always a debate over exactly what colorway to go with the character, or at least this was my experience in the days of Masters Universe Classics. Being kind of a newer Masters fan at that time, I was kind of learning as I went. And I remember there being such an uproar over exactly what colors they would use for Man-E-Faces. And I remember it had to be decided with a poll where people could either say that he would be orange, he would be flesh tone like he is in the mini comic, or he would be kind of a halfway. And I believe the halfway option won, but the figure came out pretty much flesh toned anyway. So it's kind of obvious what the Horsemen wanted to do, and they just kind of made it happen. But yeah, this is supposed to represent more of that flesh tone mini comics kind of coloration of the character. Differences are more just color and facial design. And there isn't any new tooling on the figure except for the face plates that are inside of the head. First, we'll just look at the overall details on the figure. You can just see that it's kind of the Man-E-Faces outfit that we're all accustomed to, with the cool cylinders and the tubes and everything, and the big containment helmet and suit and all of that. Some nice details on the back as well. The copyright date is still 2020 back here. So of course we know that, it's the same tooling. The accessory is also the same, although the coloration is different. It's lighter, and we'll look at that later when we look at the comparisons. And of course we have the boots. And what is kind of funny is that the hands haven't changed at all, and they still have the ridges on them as if he were wearing gloves. But since they're all flesh tone, it almost just makes it look like he has some hideously deformed human hands here. So who knows? Maybe the poor guy does. He's been through a lot to be mystically changed into, whatever many faces is supposed to be. All right, so the main feature of the figure is, of course, the action feature up here where you turn this dial and you can turn the faces, and change them out. But just so you know, you actually can move the head independently and the faceplate will stay where it's at. So if you wanted to, you could bring it all the way around. And all the action features happen inside of this part. It doesn't happen down here. So that means this is free to, move however you need it to, which is a really good feature and something that they definitely could have messed up on. This is, of course, his human head here. And then turning the dial, we get the monster face, which is pretty far removed from what the original version was like, and we'll look at that in the comparison. Then we have a very different take on the robot face here, looking more like a Cyberman from Doctor Who. I do think that it's good that they used kind of a silvery flecked paint here, so that does enhance it quite a bit. For now, we'll bring him back to his regular state. As for articulation, there's really not much use in me showing it. It's the exact same thing that we've seen a million times with these Origins figures. There really isn't anything inhibited except that you can't really make the helmet go up and down at all. You're just going to get a straight up swivel, but I'm glad that that wasn't, that wasn't a problem or something like that. Of course, these boots will always limit what the hinges can do down here, so that's really the only thing to be aware of. It just kind of makes it a little difficult to pose them around sometimes. Of course, the bulk of this review will be looking at some comparisons, and I think by far the most apt comparison is just the original Origins version here. And you can see, side by side, the color differences are much more apparent than if you just looked at this on its own. I think just looking at this on its own, you're tempted to be like, it seems like a pretty basic Manny Faces to me. But once you have them side by side, it is very obvious. This is almost like a Simpsons yellow over here. I've always thought that the Origins version seemed more yellow than it did orange, which I always thought was an interesting way to go. But that's, of course, part of the pantheon of bizarre color changes for Manny Faces skin, which can never, ever be consistent. You can also see that it's much brighter when it comes to like the tones being used and the blue, especially these pink highlights. Definitely brighten up the whole figure. And here he's wearing a Speedo versus, these are just supposed to be blue pants, I guess. And of course we have those blue gloves I was talking about earlier that have the ridges, whereas, these are just flesh tone. You can see those ridges right there. You can also tell that the guns are, even though they're the same mold, they're definitely different tones here. And it's a little more obvious in person than it's coming across on camera, but this is definitely a darker, deeper orange, and this is a little bit lighter. Of course, the big differences are the face plates right here. Now, this one is very animated looking to me. He definitely has kind of a Filmation sort of styling to him, in my opinion, more so than most of the other Origins figures. So as we turn the heads, we'll just see if they're in the same order. Nope, they're actually not. Believe it or not, when you first turn the original, he goes to robot. But let's just turn it the other way then. It's kind of interesting. So here's the two monster faces, and I think it's obvious that this one looks a lot better over here. So the new one is definitely a big improvement. They skimped on what they could have done with the paint for this one. I know they were going for a replication of that original figure, so it is understandable, but this just looks a lot better since they actually have, black in the mouth to highlight the teeth and everything. I think what hurts this is the mouth isn't painted at all. So that's definitely very different there with those two. Next up is our robot faces, and you can see there's a really big difference here. The color interest is higher here because they have that pink kind of going, that highlight, but I definitely like this silvery kind of tone going over here. So I think they each have something. This is a lot more eye-catching, I think, but that brings us back to our original human head. And here, once again, in a 3-for-3 knockout, I really like this one a lot more than this one over here. This one, of course, it's meant to be a replication of the original, but there's not a lot of personality going here with the face. Certainly, the color, like I said, is a little more Simpsons-y than I think they might have intended it to be necessarily. But this one over here, it's very serious. It's a dramatic kind of tone that they have going. Very high quality sculpting happening right here, and this kind of ends up being a little too soft for my taste. So I think overall you've got kind of a conundrum with which one of these kind of comes off better. because there's things I like about both of them. I always like there to be a lot of bright colors and a lot of high contrast with Masters characters. So I do like the pink highlights right here and all of that. I think it looks really good. But this is a lot more subdued, but that's okay because I think that this one, it just feels a little more appropriate. Makes the character seem a little more heroic, where this is just like, hey, bright colors, you know, it's kind of overwhelming. If I had to go with one, I would probably go with the mini comics version because all three faceplates are better. Just for funsies, I'll show real quick. The CGI version came out about a year back or so, and yeah, that's definitely an interesting design. This is probably the one of the better figures that came out in the CGI line. It has some nice soft goods back here for the little cape thing, and it's even an M for Man-E-Faces. And I really liked the redesign overall. It was kind of a weird interpretation of the character, but it's, you know, it's supposed to be their take on Man-E-Faces. He just has a hard time standing because his legs are part of an action feature, so he's not very well balanced. Then going to the Masterverse figures here, you can actually see that they did their own Man-E-Faces, and this was for the New Eternia line, so definitely their own take. I always thought this turned out pretty well. I always really liked it. I think that the one thing that I never could necessarily get behind was all this orange on the chest. I feel like that this part up here should have been blue, just like the part over the shoulder. And I think that hurts its ability to connect. Like, all that should have been blue to me, and so the helmet would have seemed less out of place. Everything else I really liked about this figure, and it has a lot of cool alternate faceplates. You know, it actually has some stuff we don't see in other versions that they added, you know, like a skull face and things. And it even has like a Gar face. So there's so many different things you can do, and his extra faceplates even pop into this backpack back here. So I just think that there's so many neat ideas they did in this one. And of course, now we're going to go way back to Classics land right here. And this was the original Classics Man-E-Faces. And you can see that here we go to Robot and we go to Monster. And of course, this monster face is absolutely killer. I really love what they did with this. So I don't think either one of them has the monster face beat. I think that the Horseman much more liked the mini comics version of Man-E-Faces, and so I think what they ended up doing was just kind of going with something that was flesh tone anyway, and you know, regardless of poll results or whatever. It's funny because, you know, this is more flesh tone than this, and this is supposed to straight up be the mini comics version. On camera, this reads as a little more orange than it actually is, but it's still a peach color in a way. And here are the Man-E-Faces of Man-E-Faces reassembled for what might be perhaps the most racially confusing family reunion of all time since King Grayskull's. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, every color that you can imagine, every shade of Man-E-Faces is here, from Simpsons yellow to more flesh tone than He-Man to old guy to flat orange to peach. You name it, there's a shade in there for Man-E-Faces. Maybe he should be called Manny Shades of Orange. Very interesting how many treatments this guy has gotten in the modern era of figures. This may be the last version of Man-E-Faces we see when it comes to distinct versions and origins, you know. This may be it for a while. I think that it definitely is a really cool figure. I think that Mattel needs to be careful about partnering sometimes for some of these exclusives. Some of these don't work out very well for collectors. And right around the same time, we had that second Rulers of the Sun 3-pack that was exclusive to Target. And that didn't work out at all. I think lots of pre-orders for this. And then if memory serves, I do believe that there were lots of pre-orders for this guy that got canceled. So I'm not exactly sure what happened to cause so many issues lately with some of their exclusives, but it's very concerning. And hopefully that gets resolved and this guy will be readily available. But if he's not, Hopefully this review will help you decide if it was worth it to maybe seek him on the secondary market or pay some kind of markup or something like that. I do feel like he is an upgrade over the very soft kind of Manny faces back here. I feel like this one will definitely take precedence in my display, but it is, you know, that's definitely a decision you'll have to make about whether or not you're willing to dish out the big bucks on the secondary market. I'm always very adverse to doing that. So buyer beware. All right, friends, well, that will do it for me. If you want to support me here on the channel and keep us going, the best thing that you can do is to subscribe, like the video, and share the link in your groups. These are definitely the best ways to keep us going here on Fanboys Forever. Like I've said recently, I'm not sure how many of these videos I'll be able to do, as you know, my wife and I are expecting and things like that. So definitely money in my house will be taking precedence for more important things than this. But definitely, if you want to support me, any support is appreciated. So thank you so much. Take care and God bless. Fanboy out.